listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachael Herrscher.
Hey, where are my back to school moms at? Dads, you too. I don't mean to leave you out. But for this week's intro, you just get to hear me decompress a little bit about the first day of school and all of the feelings I have this year about it. I wrote a post on todaysmama.com called, Hey Mama, it's August, time to feel guilty. And it was all about how as soon as August 1st hits, you feel the summer countdown clock hit. And, you know, summer practically feels over. At that point, the holidays are done. It might as well be Happy New Year's, like it's next year. And everything seems to be in fast forward. And then I did a little retrospective of like, May mom, she's super worn out. Just bring on the summer. No more school parties, performances. Like, just end it. June mom's killing it. She's doing such a good job. Like, just going through the bucket list. July mom walks in, and there's this awesome meme I found that says, June mom, let's go to the water park, the library, the splash pad, arts and crafts, beach vacation. And it says, July mom, Netflix is your parent now. I mean, we can all relate. And then, oh, hey there, August mom, Happy New Year. So I was feeling that a lot this year. So I kind of was building up to the first day of school with kind of that panic and like guilt of, you know, did we do everything we wanted to do, coupled with being really worn out from my kids being home all summer, because working from home and having kids is tough. I feel like you have to shift gears every 10 to 15 minutes, right? So if I'm trying to get focused on a thing, 15 minutes later, I'm giving a ride to someone somewhere. 10 minutes later, I need to get somebody a snack, and then I'm on a conference call. I mean, you get my drift. It's just all over the place. So this year I was particularly annihilated. So I kind of thought I would feel relieved a little bit today, but I'm conflicted on both sides of the spectrum. And then to top things off, my oldest started high school. So I decided, you know, send the kids to school, did the whole first day of school morning hustle, and then I came home and I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to lay on the couch and I'm going to feel my feelings. I'm going to hear the quiet, I'm going to feel my feelings. And then it was good, but like I'm getting a little emotional at that point, thinking about, I've got one in high school, one in junior high, one in elementary school. So I decided to go on a walk. And on that walk, my friend, who usually struggles on the first day of school, texts me and she's like, I'm so proud of myself. I'm killing it today. How are you? And I stopped in the middle of the street, and I'm not joking. It was like 2 seconds and crocodile tears are like falling from my face. So I can't stop crying. So I am walking home as fast as I can. I've basically put my hair over half my face. Like I'm like an angsty emo, like 9th grader, just trying to get home before anybody sees me. I make it to my backyard. I sit down for a second. My friend's still texting me, and she's, you know, telling me a little bit about her friend who recently passed away from MS in the midst of all this, at which point I start choking on my tears. I'm ugly crying in my backyard, and I swallow probably my tears down the wrong tube of my throat, and I'm coughing and choking in my backyard. Anyway, it gets better from there. I finally recover, bring myself back together, come inside, and just try to reset my life. But this is all to say, man, like the first day of school, just some years it's easy, and some years it's like this marker for another year older, more time gone. How much time do we have left, right? Especially with a high school kid. And not like it's really over. I mean, there's another post I wrote on todaysmama.com that was called I'm Done Counting, because I hate when people lay out these like 18 summers, it's all you've got. And it creates this sense of panic. But like, I'm also not going to lie to you. I'm feeling like kind of panicked. It's going too fast, you know? And so back to school, some years it's full of relief, and there's still a little relief in here for me to be able to get stuff done. But, you know, it also is looking at their progress and what's next and how fast it's moving and where we should be or could be and all of those things. So, I don't really have a huge point other than to say, hey, back to school. How you feeling? I'm going to start a conversation on the site. I'll put a link in the show notes. But I want to hear if you were celebrating, if you were crying like me, which I don't think I've cried like that since my oldest went to kindergarten, for heaven's sakes. Or whether you're conflicted, too. It's like the weirdest day of the year to me. So, again, link in the show notes, and let's talk more online. Stay tuned for the rest of today's show.
You're listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachael Herrscher. We'll be back right after this.
Ever worry that all your kids are doing with their friends is showing each other videos on YouTube or Snapchatting each other whilst they are literally sitting right next to each other? Ever wish you could manage your kids' devices wherever they went? Well, Circle Go makes that possible. Circle Go takes all those settings on your kids' devices that they have at home and extends them to 4G LTE and any other Wi-Fi networks they join. Filters and time limits apply anywhere and everywhere, even for apps like Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube. How, you ask? Find out more at meetcircle.com.
And now back to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachael Herrscher.
Hey, it's Rachael from the Today's Mama podcast, back again. This episode's a little different. It's just me flying solo. I'm kicking off a 3-part series on screen time in our kids. It's one of the topics I'm most passionate about and something I talk to groups of parents and kids about all the time. We've actually been working on just an ebook called Tech Reset for parents and families to use together, and it's all about resetting our relationship with technology. So this little 3-part series is just 3 simple kind of rules and philosophies that we've implemented in our house that I thought have made a really big difference. But first, let me set this up for you, okay? Last summer, I lost my mind. I had one kid on the Xbox, one kid on Instagram, and one watching Netflix from the desktop computer while it was the most gorgeous day you've ever seen outside. Just a beautiful summer day. So the parental rage overcame me, and I started unplugging devices, snatching things, boxed them up, put them away, kicked them all outside, and I dismantled the technologies of our household. This was about mid-July, and we spent the rest of the summer like that, 100% unplugged. There was no apps, no TV, no games, no movies, nothing. They just had to figure out what to do with their little bad selves. Was it hard? Yeah, for the first few days. And then after that, it became normal and fine. But as I had to bring technology back into our lives at some point, right? With school starting, because with older kids, they need phones. They do. I would like to say they don't, but they do. And certain apps and things for their classes. So I had to pull back a plan and kind of adjust our thinking and restart the school year. But with that parental rage, I want you to notice something. Maybe I lost my mind a little. Maybe you have too. But it's never too late to put the wheels back on the bus. So, yes, I lost my mind. But I circled back with my kids, and we had some really good conversations about why, and then we instituted some changes together. So if you haven't done a perfect job to this point with the conversations you're supposed to have with your kids, with the limits and boundaries and rules you should put around screen time and cell phones and all of that stuff, nobody's done a great job. We're really kind of this first set of parents having to tackle technology at this scale with our kids. So there's always time to try something new. And hopefully I'll give you a few ideas to do that. If you think your kids are too old, too set in their ways, let me just remind you of something. In all caps, me yelling this through your speaker. You are the parent, and this stuff matters. So don't back away from this because you feel like your kids are too far gone, that it's useless, they're set in their ways. This stuff matters. It matters for your kids. It matters for you. We can all do better. So here we go. Here are the 3 screen time rules that my kids actually thanked me for. This issue isn't cut and dry. There's no set it and forget it solution to our screen time problem. So these rules will sound more like guiding principles or conversations that you have or mindsets, but I think that you'll find that each one will help set the foundation for everything else that you do. I think parenting demands more of us today than at any other time. We've got many of the same stresses that our parents and grandparents had before us in terms of providing for a family, the kind of day-to-day things. But parenting today demands not only technical intelligence, which some of you may feel like you're lacking, and if you do, again, it's never too late. If you want to parent children using technology, you have got to go learn how to use the technology they're using. Don't back down from this. But we also have to have emotional intelligence to help guide our kids through a pretty overwhelming landscape. So the first rule or mindset we're going to talk about is create shared vision. This has two parts. The first is figurative. Let's talk about the process of creating a shared vision and getting buy-in from your kids. We don't get buy-in from our kids when they're not part of the process. So if we think we're going to sail in and put the smack down and have that resonate, sometimes it'll work, but most of the time they're not part of the solution. So these rules or guidelines are not punishments. They're there to help our kids build good habits. I want my kids to have fun. I want them to be able to do the things they want to do. I just want them to learn how to do those things at the appropriate times, right? And these are the things that I communicate to them when I say, hey, we're going to make some changes. They're not punishments. This is to help you build good habits. Our top priority is your health and happiness. Let me tell you about my job as a parent. It's to give you the best shot that I can at health and happiness, and habits are a big, big part of that. And then another one that looms large in my mind, which is for my kids, hey, you may choose to have kids in the future, and you have a really big job. You're going to have to help those kids create really healthy technology habits too. And that will be with even trickier things like virtual reality. I mean, what teenage kid doesn't want to go live in a virtual world with the ultimate avatar and all the things to do where they can unplug from reality, right? That's going to be coming more and more in their face. So my intention is to set this whole conversation up in a positive light. It's like a love sandwich. I'm going to sandwich them in my love and good intentions and concern from them on the outside. Let them know that I'm here to help. The stuff in the middle has got to come from them. So, how much time do your kids really want to be spending on their devices? Ask them. I've yet to find a kid, and you may prove me wrong, but I've yet to find a kid who will admit to me out loud that they think they should be spending more time on screens. They know it's out of control. But we've handed them the keys to the fun bus and expected them to keep it in park. And we're like, why is this happening? So I asked my son this question. What's your goal? How much time do you want to be spending per day on your phone? He said, I don't know, like 45 minutes a day. Okay, well, let's look at how much time you're actually spending. So it turns out, when we checked, it was more like 5 hours a day. Their perception of how much time is spent and the reality of how much time is spent is very different. So let's dig in and see what's happening. You can do this with third-party apps like Moment. You can install that and track their time. But the quickest way to find out without having to start from scratch is by checking battery usage. So you can do it on an iPhone. You can do it on the Android. I'll put instructions for both of those in the show notes. But on an iPhone, basically, you go to the settings, scroll down to the section that says battery, select that. Make sure you hit the little clock so that you're seeing the actual time spent when you're reviewing. You've got two options to toggle between. One is to check for the last 24 hours and one is to check for the last week. So now the next piece is to do the math for this together. CNN recently reported that teens spend 9 hours a day using media. So I'm just going to use the 9-hour number. So if we want to find out what the impact is for them on their life, on their month, on their year, let's do the math. 9 hours a day times 7 days a week equals 63 hours a week. 63 hours a week times 4 weeks in a month equals 252 hours a month. 252 hours a month times 12 months equals 3,024 hours a year. Those numbers can be hard for a kid to wrap their mind around. So let's take those annual hours and break them back down to days. 3,024 hours broken down into 24-hour increments, that's 126 24-hour days a year with their face in a screen or some sort of media. Now, if we break that down to waking hours, this is the number I really like. Let's say that they're awake 16 hours a day. So let's go back and take that 3,024 hours and divide it by their 16 waking hours a day. That's 189 conscious days of their life. 6.3 months, or literally half of their year. This stuff adds up and it matters. It's estimated that our kids will have spent 20 years on their phone by the time they're 60 years old. Is that how you want to spend your life? Do you think they want to spend their life like that? Ask them. When I asked my son what he could do with those other hours, he would love to be a professional soccer player, or what could he do to improve his grades, or learn some other skill. That stopped him in his tracks. Now let me toss this out. If you have a hard time coming to consensus, even after having a discussion like that, on how much time is appropriate, or where they may want to adjust their goals, it might be best to tap your pediatrician or a therapist to help you work through what's best for your child. You might be dealing with some real addiction issues, or maybe just have some communication stumbling blocks, but it never hurts to get a little help if you're struggling. You also want to make appropriate choices on how to help them based on how big their problem may be, and a pediatrician and a therapist can really help you do that. So let me just remind you again, you are the parent. If you've got to throw down some tough love and impose those cutbacks, there are also some apps and tools to help you do it. You're not alone. I really like Circle. It'll let you turn off the internet, set limits on apps, let you do some of that monitoring. I also like RPact. Additionally, I like Bark as a monitoring service so that if there's something happening that's not quite right, maybe your child's getting bullied, via text or email, Bark should help put some red flags on the kind of language that may, indicate that something like that is going on. In the words of one of our great and previous guests on the Today's Mama podcast, Dr. Meg Meeker, we don't discipline our kids to be mean to them. We discipline our kids to teach them self-control. And that's all this stuff is here to help you do, is help them build the habits that allow them to have self-control. So the second piece of this shared vision we're creating, is that we have literal shared vision. There is no expectation of privacy on these devices. I actually read it on my fourth grader's technology agreement just yesterday that, in quotes, there is no expectation of privacy on school computers. No one can expect complete privacy in a digital world, not from the device itself, not from the platforms installed on it, not from the parents of your kids' friends that they're texting, who are seeing the things that the kids text back and forth. And definitely your kids should not be expecting privacy from their own parents on these devices. Apps like Instagram and Facebook access data and audio on those devices. They run that through AI, and that's how they decide what ads to serve you. That stuff they put on Snapchat, it doesn't just disappear. Here's why this matters. If you let your kids believe they have privacy on their devices, they'll treat those devices as if they do, which is a bad thing. Their little hormonal developing minds aren't ready for that responsibility. There's a time and a place. If they need a place to express some private thoughts, gift them a beautifully bound leather journal or notebook and let them have privacy there. But their cell phones, their tablets, those aren't the place. I'm also a big believer that they need to learn how to think before they speak. And I hope my face is a big reminder for that. So think before they speak and think before they post. Here's what this looks like at our house. We've got all the passwords. My husband and I can check the phones anywhere, anytime. And agreeing on that point is prerequisite to having a phone at all. That can be uncomfortable, but life isn't really comfortable, and they need to feel that. I read a text once where my son had said something to his buddy involving a swear word in a text message. This was when he first had his phone. And here's how that went down. I said to him, "Bud, first of all, you're not even using that word correctly, and that embarrasses both of us. Second of all, if I'm sitting here reading your texts, do you think his mom might be reading his texts too? How does that make you feel? Do you regret saying it? Do you think you would have done that a little differently? Let's talk about how we do that moving forward. My kids have to understand that they've got a digital footprint. A screenshot can last forever. Archives can last forever. And like it or not, while I legally have the means, I'm going to take advantage. I often think about the Michelle Carter case. She's the girlfriend who kept telling her boyfriend to take his life, and then he did. Her text messages mattered. Those digital actions she took were part of another human being's life ending and landed her as a minor in the national spotlight and with a pretty hefty criminal record. That affects the rest of her life and ended someone else's. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can read more about that case if you're not that familiar, but it sets a legal precedent. So yeah, my kids don't get privacy on their very public devices with very real consequences. I'll stay involved, and sometimes we'll be uncomfortable, but the stakes are too high for us to unplug from their digital lives. Overwhelming? Take baby steps. Start by getting on the same page about your goals, as I said in the beginning, by creating that shared vision. Next, blow the doors and curtains off those devices to work towards that literal shared vision. It's going to be a whole lot easier to do that from the beginning. And if you're in that boat where you need to course correct, just remember it's worth it. Uncomfortable and worth it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope we've given you a few conversation starters to help you reset your family's relationship with technology. I've put a bunch of links in the show notes to other blog posts and resources on this topic, both from todaysmama.com and other places on the interwebs. Be sure to come back for part 2, where we'll talk about defining the purpose of each device and how to create an environment that reinforces your goals. So I hope to catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Today's Mama podcast with Rachael Herrscher. To find out more, go to todaysmama.com. That's today's, MAMA.com. Today's Mama, connecting moms and families with the best of today.